It's an honor to meet Mike Santos. Everything he just dropped on me right there, I feel like I'm around hockey nobility right now, to be honest with you. I am if football's my number one, hockey's my number one AA. I absolutely love hockey. I've loved it since the first time I went to a game when I was a kid back in the mid 70s. And I can't wait to hear all you have to share, my friend. I really can't. And the new Paisan right there, Bellistreri, you got to love seeing a Paisan on the show with me. That's all I can say about that.
Well, Steve's been with me for a while, man. I've dragged him everywhere. By the way, a little information about Balustrade when I write my next book. As long as he wants to do it, he's going to write the forward. So get ready, Steve. I'm
I'm
working on
ready
it.
whenever you are, my friend.
When I go,
Mike, it's a pleasure to meet you guys. It's a pleasure. I mean, I grew up a rabid hockey fan in Boston when I was a little kid. I went to Bobby Orr's rookie season. I'm dating myself there. So I went to a game with when Bobby Orr was a rookie playing the Canadians, which is their big rival, but they ended up losing that game. But, I could at least say I watched him and many times after that, but that rookie season was kind of special because that was my first ever hockey game. So I'm pretty excited. This is fun. I didn't even know what the topic was tonight. You just asked me to come on, and I was like, I'm in, sure.
oh, I came up with some easy ones. Come on, Meriday. Let everybody know how easy these kind of picking topics are.
Hey, you want to talk Four Nations hockey, my man? I couldn't get enough of that. That was one of the most amazing things that hockey has done in quite some time, and they would do themselves an injustice if they don't stick with that. I mean, I get that we have the World Cup coming up in 28. I get that we have the Olympics next year, but just those four teams that they put on the ice and let battle out over a few days period of time was just amazing, and I can't wait to talk about it all.
Well, we're going to do it now. Since I gave you the topics, you probably host the show instead of me. I don't even care. Kidding with you, Barbara. But anyways, let's get to it. According to Front Office Sports Canada, USA was the most watched non-Olympic hockey game ever in the United States. 9.3 million viewers, more than the 2019 Stanley Cup. Game 7 drew over 16 million viewers in North America. Mike, surreal. Is that unbelievable or what?
Yeah, I think we've got to be a little guarded as to what the after effect is actually going to be with this tournament, though. First of all, it was a great event, especially in place of the traditional All-Star game or All-Star weekend, which in pretty much every sport, I'll sort of say baseball is not this way, is terrible. Kudos to the NHL for coming up with something that was a hit. And most importantly is it was competitive, right? And that's the thing we complain about in most of the All-Star games is it's not competitive. But this was a competitive event. I don't believe it would have been nearly as successful as it was if it wasn't for the, I'll call it staged 3 fights in 9 seconds in the first Canada-US game. And I believe that that's what really drew the TV audience for the championship game between the US and Canada. When all those sort of non-hockey people tuned in and watched that event and didn't see any fights, I wonder if they'll be back. That's the only negative I see in this whole thing. The other thing that I would comment on too is that it was great to see teams from the U.S. and Canada, of course, from Finland and Sweden, which most people, at least in the United States, knew nothing about. But there are some other countries that weren't represented in this event. And so where do we go from here, right? I mean, I hear discussions about maybe an 18 tournament. But as we expand this thing, it's going to take more and more time from the regular season. I don't know if that's possible. And I wonder what a Russian team with, people like Bobrovsky and Shesterkin in goal would have done against either U.S. or Canada.
Hey, Trent.
Yeah.
What do you think?
It's your stage, my
Well,
brother.
oh my stage, yeah, man. I mean, listen, Four Nations, like them going into this format to me, like blew the doors off any all-star game that ever happened. And I thought, like Mike, I thought like, man, where are the Russians, right? Like I would have liked to have seen that team. That would have been pretty exciting. I think it gets a little watered down. You get down to 8. You got some teams that don't have like the 20 quality players that some of these others. I mean, man, you got a revolving door in Canada, the US, like not easy to get a 20-man roster because there's, well, like, you know, you could have gone with 40 different players easily on both sides of that compete well. And I know like everyone's looking at Patrick Kane, who's done a lot of like international play for us, and he's aged out maybe, but he's still a really good player, right? And so it's man, I'm telling you, that was the best hockey I'd seen in so long. You know, obviously everyone knows I'm a baseball guy, right? The World Series, everything else, but I have 4 boys that played, you know, and they 2 of them played junior hockey, and you know, and I still got a 13-year-old coming up, man. So it's a blast for me to watch. And you know, and I talk to a lot of youth coaches during the Cup, and I'm like, hey, are you having all your kids watch this Nations Cup? Because this is the best hockey they're ever going to see. The speed of play, the quality. I mean, you've got guys that are clearly all-stars for their team that are playing 4th line on these teams, right? Like it's crazy. And so it was a lot of fun. I am going to sidebar this on my one claim to fame story and why I belong here. All right. That 2000 Angel ring right there. My claim to fame is, and you're going to appreciate this, Motor City, is that when we won that in 02, little did we know in the spring of 02, there was a Stanley Cup champion, Detroit Red Wings. And so the Calgary ring provider is the same that provided that one right there for the Angels in 02. So that's my claim to fame. I have a ring. I don't have a Red Wings ring, but I have a ring by the same manufacturer. That's what I have.
Great stuff. Okay. All right, Barbara.
I have no rings. I'm sorry. I have a high school state championship ring. That's the best I can do for you,
That's
my
a good
brother.
ring. That's a good ring.
It was an amazing team, to be quite honest with you. But I don't know. If you guys were to pull one team out of that 4-team group, who would you have pulled out to replace them with Russia? Like, I don't know if you could have pulled anybody out, because at the end of the day, those 4 teams played over the top hockey. And I get what Russia has, but man, and if they go to 8 teams, I agree. That's watering it down. That takes away from, I don't know. I think you're right. It takes away from the NHL guys playing against each other. I do a Meriday minute, and I did about 6 of them on these games. And the one that stuck out to me that I actually did was, you know, all these teams had NHL guys the whole way through the roster, and they're banging each other and they're crushing each other into the boards. And then a few days later, they're back on the ice playing with each other on the same team. I mean, hockey is just a different animal. And you know, Mike, like I said, I'm very honored to have you with us here tonight. You understand that. I've watched it happen with my son. You know, he plays hockey. And it's a different animal. The camaraderie, the spirit of the game. You go out there, you play your hardest for whoever you're playing with at that time, given point in time. And then if you move on, you do the same thing for the next group. And, you know, I really hope they don't expand it. Everything about that was perfect to me. Everything about it. And I don't think any other major league sport at this point in time could provide us with anything as far as a mid-season break or an end of the season all-star type of game that even rivals that. Hockey has set a standard that it's going to be really difficult for all these other organizations, professional sports organizations, to match up with.
Yeah, you brought up something that's really important, and that is that this was not an international tournament. This was an NHL event.
Yeah.
And all the teams were comprised of NHL players. They represented their countries, the 4 countries that were in this event. But it was an NHL event, and it was meant to replace the All-Star game, and it was fantastic. It was so much better than watching something that's not competitive. I thought it was very interesting that the U.S.-Canada game happened on a Saturday evening, the first game, which got so much attention. And then the very next evening, we had the NBA All-Star game, which was probably the most atrocious one I've ever seen.
Yeah.
Who watched? Who watched, Mike? Who watched that game? Like,
yeah, I mean, I'm an NBA fan. All these years on the road, there were lots of nights where we'd get into a city, and rather than just go out for another dinner somewhere, if there was an NBA game, I'd go grab a ticket and watch. And so I'm a fan of the NBA, but gee, those players. I mean, if you look at the way the NBA players treated that All-Star, they had a sort of a little mini tournament with 4 different teams on it as well, compared to the competitiveness, like you said, about of the players in the hockey games. It's night and day.
Mike, just to piggyback off of what you said, when LeBron bowed out at the last second on the NBA All-Star game and didn't give a guy who potentially was the alternate the opportunity to come in there and play,
right?
That's when I mean, progressively I've been going downhill with the NBA, but that's when I really was kind of like, wow, what a selfish league this league is. Mm-hmm. Like they just and in the NHL, these guys just want to play the game. They want to play the game.
It's true. I don't think this will be an issue, but never say never. I mean, the NHL players have a players association just like every other major sport, and there are players that now are not playing because they're injured. One of them is Matthew Tkachuk for the Panthers, and there's some reports that he may not return this season. I don't know if that's true or not, but he's not. I know he's not playing tonight against Edmonton, and he's not playing their next game against Calgary. I don't believe Brady is playing. That's going to be something that'll be discussed down the line. But I think they've at least come up with something that gets the juices flowing and is competitive. And so whether they take a longer break, heck, they play an Olympic tournament in 2 weeks with a whole bunch of teams. They can certainly find a way to play an expanded tournament in that time or less, if they decide to do that. The other thing too, not to pour more water on the fire, but would it have been so great if it wasn't U.S. and Canada in the final? And very easily could have happened. Remember the first time the NHL players went to the Olympics in Nagano, Japan, and neither U.S. or Canada made the medal round, and it was a complete flop. Except for the players who had a really good time over there. But it's it's a risk too. I mean, those games the final game in Boston may have not been so great if it was Finland against Sweden.
Okay, great points, Lorraine. Let's go to the chat room real quick. I know Steve's waiting patiently. The NBA found a way to make it worse than last year, which is impressive. Only 4 million people. Only 4 million people. Yeah, so that's and if the NHL got on first take with Stephen A. Smith, you're really making some progress. Okay, and now let's go to Brian Pettit. My idea for next year for the All-Stars just to do regular season game, because they have the Olympics. After that, they have 4 nations, then do a week of the All-Stars weekend. Why not put them all up there? All right, Steve, I know you're patiently waiting, so go ahead, my friend.
Yeah, I was really pleasantly surprised by the passion in the game, and because All-Star games have been going downhill for quite a while. I mean, the NFL now, it's just flag football, right?
Yeah.
We were talking about the NBA, and which I don't watch, but I saw all the stuff on TV, and it was horrible. And even the NHL All-Star game hasn't been great. And for them to put this out there, I mean, I was curious of how it was going to work, and watching these guys go out, there was a lot of political aspects of what was going on in the world, and I think that kind of inflamed stuff. But as Mike knows, I saw a lot of Canadian hockey fans trying to justify the booing of the U.S. national anthem, and they kept saying, well, we're not booing the U.S., we're not booing your team, we're booing your president. And I answered quite a few of those on social media, and I was like, that's complete BS, because, growing up in Boston, they've been booing the national anthem in the NHL playoffs when the Bruins go to Montreal for decades. I mean, I can go back to the 1980s, when the Don Cherry was the coach of the Boston Bruins. I mean, they were booing the national anthem then. So, but I think that's what injected a lot of passion into it. We saw that in the first USA-Canada game, and I absolutely loved it. And the games were really good. And I think, I agree with Brian Pettit there. I think next year with the Olympics, probably not a good time to do that. But after that, I would, rather than having the traditional all-star Snorefest, have this again. I mean, if you want to talk about some passion, if the Russians did have a team in this, oh my God, can you imagine what that would have been?
Yeah, the only thing I'll say here, because I know I have a lot more ground I want to get to, is to the NHL's credit, though, they at least tried different things throughout the years. We talk about, remember 1972, Mike, when you had Team Canada against the Russians, the Canada Cup or Summit series and all that business. So they do a lot of different things. The NBA is just a laugher. Baseball, well, obviously we've seen some interest. I think of the All-Star games, I would truly say the NHL in their format at best. I would lean a little bit more toward baseball being number 2, and then it's a toss-up between the NBA and the NFL, and I've been to the Pro Bowl, and that was bad. And I'll just say this much. Jerry Green, the late writer for the Detroit News, said he wouldn't go to a Pro Bowl game. He thinks it's bad, but glad I went to. At least I got to see one. Anybody want to add one last thing to this?
Yeah, well, I was just going to tell you, I think the game changed for MLB when they made the game matter, that winning team got the home field advantage in the World Series. Now that all of a sudden mattered because you got a couple players that are going to be in there, and pretty much at the halfway mark, everyone's still in it. A couple are 25 games out of out of it, but for the most part, you still got a chance. You're saying there's a chance, right? So, so I thought it was good. And I also want to know, by the way, do I count, because I was watching it in Mexico with probably about 80% Canadians on that time. I want to know if I'm counted in that 16.9 million in North America, because it was awesome, man. What a night.
To your point, Trent, these all-star games started to go downhill, in particular with the NBA and the NHL, when they started making them less about the game, more about all the other stuff. The NBA started this with their dunk competition and three-point shot and all that other stuff. The NHL followed suit. They copied it the very next year, and it started actually the NHL in 1990 in Pittsburgh, the first one. And immediately the scores went from 5-3 in the All-Star game to 14-12. And I think what they did is they gave a sign to the players that this is about entertaining sponsors and having parties and doing this whole thing, for the weekend. And they just gave the players the sign that you don't have to be competitive. And
Mike, I was at that game in 1990 in Pittsburgh. Yeah, because I'm originally from Pittsburgh, and you're right. I literally walked up to the game with the guy from Friends that died. I can't, Matthew. Yeah. I literally walked up and we were bullshitting the whole way. I got to the game, was standing in line with Robbie Brown, who was one of Lemieux's wingers. It was an all-star game of just trying to get people to just buy into all the circus act of it. Yeah. But, I think in the NFL, and I have a solution for a couple of these. I think with the NFL, I think instead of having any type of game or anything, since you don't want to hit, guys that make that team should take that money because let's face it, they don't need that money. Maybe donate it to their favorite charity. And then with the NBA, they lost that game when they stopped, like the guys in the slam dunk contest, when guys just, who are these guys? Mac McClung, he's a D-leaguer. Like you lost me when that stuff started happening. So, I mean, you need to get these guys fully involved if you're going to have these all-star games.
Yeah. Remember the NHL with all the other events that Scott mentioned, they weren't during the middle of the season. The Canada Cup and all these types of international, the World Cup of hockey, they were all done in the summer months. But it's all about being competitive. I know, Steve, you probably remember, like I do, or at least when I was a kid, that the college all-star team used to play the Super Bowl champs before the season. And it was a very
I remember that.
Because the Super Bowl champs didn't want to be embarrassed by a bunch of college kids.
Nope.
And the college kids were fired up to show what they could do. And it used to be a hell of a game every year.
Yeah, those were enjoyable. Those games
were. Yeah, I guess this whole crew remembers that particular situation.
Yeah,
we could talk about this for ages, but anybody else want to say something? I got a few other things I want to get to, and we'll go ahead with this. This topic won't be as complex, but I enjoyed laying low while all you guys talked about this. And I can guarantee you one thing, everybody, I'm not losing my voice on this show. I got 4 heavyweights here on this crew, and I mean 4, man. They are heavyweights, so that's a heavy extent of what I'm going to say tonight. But next topic, Connor McDavid predicts Sidney Crosby will play 12 months from now at the Olympics. All right, we'll just make this an easy one. Do you think that's the case? And give me a simple explanation. We'll start with you, Mike.
Yeah, 100%. I mean, first of all, we're talking about Canada, and that's everything to these guys. I don't think it's just by chance that they seem to come up big in all these games, whether it was the gold medal at the Olympics in Vancouver or whether it was last week in Boston. This means the world to them. And Sidney Crosby is one of the great players of the game, great players of the history of the game. There's no way you'll keep him out of the Olympic Games.
Okay, what do you think, Trent?
Yeah, I expect it fully, man. And I mean, listen, he was all in on 4 Nations, man. I mean, he is right in the mix of it, and he is bringing his A game. And I mean, I think there's nothing more that he wants. And I think they got a little redemption by winning 4 Nations. But I think what they do realize is that Olympic gold is not a shoo-in, and they've got a great team. And I would probably pick them as the favorite today. But man, I mean, it's proven out again and again in the Olympics. It's no easy feat. And I'm sure this could be his swan song for the Olympics. So everyone wants to go out a winner. I expect him there.
All right, Mr. Pittsburgh.
You're
Don't
talking
worry,
about-
I got another topic, and then we're going to go to a station break after this that has your name written all over America.
Listen, you're talking about my guy.
I know.
I that kid, and I've met him, and I've met Lemieux, and they are cut from the same cloth, man. It's no question about it. He is in tip-top shape. He has nothing around him anymore, but he's still playing at an extremely high level, and he is respected. Those guys on that team, how many of those? Connor McDavid, like those guys love Sid, and they know what he brings to the game. And they pick his brain constantly when they're around him. There's no way on God's green earth that boy would not play well. That man would not play in the Olympics. After that, yeah, I agree. I don't know if we'll see him again as far as something like that, the Olympics. But, he's still in tip-top shape. He's going to be back, and he's going to be just as good as he's ever been. He's going to be Team Canada's captain again. I would be shocked if he wasn't. And I realize where McDavid stands with all this. I do. I get it. But, if you look at Sid's, everything he's done and what he has earned and how he carries himself, he is the face of hockey and has been the face of hockey for a long, long time.
Hey, Yusuf, glad to have you on. Let me know when you're available to come on Inside the Pitch. And Yusuf Marshall, everybody, is a superstar on that show. He was unbelievable. All right, Steve, what are your thoughts on this?
Yeah, I think that not only will he play, he should play. I mean, he's a he's an icon in Canada and in Pittsburgh. I mean, it's a no-brainer. I think he should play. He's one of the great ambassadors of the game. Even if opposing team fans don't like him, they love to go there and boo him. You know what I mean? And it wouldn't be the same without him. I think he should, and I think he should be the captain too. I mean, I know Connor McDavid is now the guy, but Sid is an icon. So I'm fully in favor of this one.
All right, one last topic before we go to station break. Mr. Pittsburgh, this one's tailor-made for you. It really, really was. Four Nations face-off. Saw the captain versus the coach in the final game. Sidney Crosby against Mike Sullivan, Team USA. First of all, I got to go with you, Mike. What do you think about this? The captain against the coach in the final? I mean, it doesn't get any more interesting than that. What do you say when these two guys get back together and finish the year about what they ended up doing in this tournament like this?
Yeah, well, the coach and the assistant coach, David Quinn, too, was also the assistant right now.
Right.
I just think that's the nature of the game. I don't believe it really, it carries over. I think there's, as much as they're competitors, and we talked about this earlier in this sport, there's also a lot of respect in the sport. I mean, you can see that when two guys, beat the crap out of one another, and then it's over, right? And
then they shake hands. Yeah,
shake hands. Or in the old days, right, Steve, in Boston, they'd go to the 3Bs across the street with the visiting team and drink until they kicked them out at 2 a.m.
Yeah,
so, I mean, that's just the nature of the game. So I don't think there's any issue there. I'm going to make one more comment though about the last topic, and that is,
sure. Go ahead.
I think we're going to be looking at an interesting, perhaps gold medal game between Ovechkin in Russia and Crosby. And
look at this guy.
Ovechkin is soon to be the leading goal scorer of all time in the NHL, and was only 1 year after Sidney Crosby was drafted.
Love it. Okay. Go ahead. All right, who's next? I guess that means you, Trent.
Yeah. I mean, for me, I think it's the camaraderie of the league. I mean, coming back, years later now from championships or whatever, man, there's not you don't miss a beat from all these wars you go together into, and you got a lot of respect for your opponent. And man, this is the beautiful thing about it. I'll talk about it on my diatribe tonight, but this is what it's all about. And I think guys really appreciate how tough it is there and how hard everybody's going. And I think it came out right after the Detroit or after the Canadian Sweden game, the first game out. Like everyone's going, man, I've never played that fast of a game in my life. And I mean, these are the fastest guys in the world, right? And it's like, man, this is a fast game. And I mean, Connor Hellebuck really shined out for me. Like these guys, I think got a new level of respect for that guy who looks like so calm back in there. And then Finland, their grit against Canada to come back and score those 3 quick goals. Butt puckers all over the whole country of Canada. Like it was crazy. Like that thing almost the whole wheels almost fell off, man. So it was I mean, just from a tournament standpoint, these guys know they're going hard. And you don't have to like your opponent to respect them. There's a ton of people in this world I've got a lot of respect for that maybe I don't like. But when you don't respect somebody, that's a different deal. And hockey is the ultimate respect of all the pro sports. They really bring it and they really honor it together in that league. And you talk to the greats and the old timers that played, they all have that. And people still honor them. It doesn't matter what year they played. They still honor those greats. And I think that's just a really cool thing about the sport, regardless of what social media says and all this crap about people. Them to each other they're always knowing that they're a warrior that went through the battle, and they have a lot of honor for that. I love it.
All right. Well, the one thing I want to ask you, okay, like I mentioned to Mike, the irony of the captain against the coach is a pretty interesting situation, isn't
Yeah.
it?
Yeah.
I mean, a captain versus a coach. What do you talk about on the pine when you get back? We don't want Mike's perspective is. What do you think? You know, you've been inside the dugout. You know what's going on there. You face each other in one place, and all of a sudden, you're back. You're buddies again.
Yeah. Well, first of all, you know, he's his guy, right? Like, I mean, Sid's
Right.
Sullivan's guy. Like, you know, oh, he would have definitely loved that spot, and he would have definitely loved the win, right? For sure. Like, I don't think, but, you know, Sid's given everything he's got to go get that thing, and he's honoring that, man. And I'm sure there's going to be a little, not soon, by the way, but give it a couple of weeks. There's going to be a little jiving in there. There's going to be a little jabs into the ribs about, you know, who won that thing and who didn't, right? There'll be a couple of reminders just to let you know, but it'll all be in good fun, and it'll all be very respectful. And it's great. It's the one thing about sports that you've got to love. And by the way, the other thing that's beautiful about this sport is like, hey, if you really go across the line, you will get knocked in the teeth and lose a couple. So they'll let you know if you step out of bounds.
Well, then you better get a NeuroGuard Plus. That was a show we had earlier that takes care of the lower jaw. Get into that. If you don't know what I'm talking about, go to my YouTube channel. We did it on Monday. All right, Mr. Pittsburgh. Now you have a chance to talk about Crosby and Sullivan, and stay on point because this is really your topic, and that's why I put it in there.
Okay.
For you, Meredith, stay on point with this one.
At the end of the day, when those fights occurred at the beginning of that first matchup, Mike Sullivan's fingerprints were not on that. That was something that those players decided to do to stir that team up. That is not Mike Sullivan hockey. And you guys being from Boston, you know that's not his style of hockey. Me watching Mike Sullivan coach at the minor league level for other teams and being the head coach at Pittsburgh for all these years, that's not his style of hockey. So Crosby went into that locker room before they played that second game for the championship, and he said Sullivan's not going to let them do that again. And if they try to get under your skin, turn your head the other way, and they're not going to do a thing about it. You noticed even when the Tkachuk brothers tried to get things going, well, Matt went out pretty quickly, but when they tried to stir up a little trouble, the Canadian guys kind of turned their back on it. They're like, whatever, you know. And I'm pretty sure that Crosby got the last laugh, not only because they won, but I'm pretty sure he got the last laugh because he knew how to outsmart his own coach. And I love that about what he did. I think Mike Sullivan's an outstanding coach. I think he's an outstanding coach. His system doesn't work any longer in Pittsburgh because they're long in the tooth. But at the end of the day, that was pretty fun to watch them battle each other. It was more a psychological, who's going to win this psychological battle based on what we're planning on doing here. And, man, I'll tell you what, that was just a lot of fun to watch those two go at it.
There you go, Meredith. That's what I needed out of you. I don't know what kind of a noise we have in the background. Is there a zoo somewhere around here? Or do I need I guess I need maybe I need my hearing aids clearer than I think.
No, you don't. My bulldog is
your bulldog.
Is that your bulldog?
Oh, there we go.
And she's snoring.
I'm kidding with you,
Wow.
man.
Yeah, my bulldog doesn't like hockey, so she's snoring up a storm over here on my left side.
Well, then, thanks a lot for telling me. I do need hearing aids, but at least I knew I was hearing something along the lines of animal. And we can have fun with it.
She knew I'm talking about her. She just woke up and walked out of the room.
Oh, come on. Bring back the bulldog. Come on, seriously.
The bulldog.
I didn't mention the ring I have is the University of South Florida, by the way. All right, Steve. Yeah.
Well, I don't. The only ring I have is a Special Forces ring that I got when I became a Green Beret. However, I have even a better one than that. I mean, I was, as Scott, you know, I was good friends with Pat Burns,
right,
who coached the Maple Leafs, the Bruins, the Canadians, and the Devils. And we lived in New Hampshire real close to each other. We were good friends. And when he took over the Devils, you know, during the season that they won the Stanley Cup, we were always talking and texting on the phone. And the morning after he won the Stanley Cup, they had been up partying all night long. He called me, and that was so cool to have the coach of the Stanley Cup winning team call you the next morning and said, "Hey, did you happen to watch the game last night?" Yeah. So,
That's
and
nice.
it's, but getting back to, the coach and the player, I think that's awesome. Again, I'm a hockey diehard traditionalist guy, and I think these guys, I know Crosby's going to rib him all the time about it. I mean, that's what we do. We love to give each other a hard time about things. I was going to say another word. I'm glad I didn't. This is a family show, but you know what I'm getting at.
Oh, yeah.
No, I just think I think it was great. The whole thing was great, and the again the fights. I think that was the passion coming out. I mean, that's what you want to see. And yeah, as the purists will say, "Oh, that's not hockey," but it kind of is, because you go back to the old days. I mean, the old saying, if you can't beat them in the alley, you won't beat them on the ice. So, I just love the whole aspect of this. And it was cool because the coach of the American team was facing his star player from the Canadian team. How it doesn't get any better than that.
Yeah.
Yeah, the only thing I'll say about it, and only in hockey can this happen. Let's forget about Hollywood.
Yeah.
This is
And the thing about hockey, again, I mean, when it's all over, you can fight, and how rough the games can be, and at the end of Game 7, everybody lines up and shakes hands. I mean, hockey's the only sport that does that. I know, in football they all kind of mill around and shake hands, but it's not the same. It's a tradition that only hockey has, how they line up like that, and I love it.
great stuff. All right, time to go to a long way to station break. Royally quacked. Those fights brought so many new hockey fans. Royally quacked. That is awesome to have you on the line. If you would kindly do everybody a favor that has a YouTube channel, including us, do you mind subscribing to that YouTube channel so you can see everything we got to offer? We really appreciate your coming on. I want to get your comment in before the station break. So Royally quacked. You followed the Bulldog. Really good. A lot of interesting noises tonight. Now we have a Royally quacked, beautiful thing. So that's one of the coolest names I've ever seen in my life. Really, Royally quacked. So please subscribe to the YouTube channel. All right, Candy, take it away.
South Florida Tribune Publishing Company published a book, Lessons from the Microphone, Tuning into the Enduring Wisdom of Visionary Leaders. It is written by our host, Scott, the Motor City Madmouth Morganroth. Talks about his 40-plus years in the industry and how it has changed. Old school media versus new school media. It's available on Amazon, Barnes & Noble, Kindle, Google, and Apple Books. There's also a link on our website, www.southfloridatribune.com. There's also a link on our website to our merchandise store and a plethora of great content, so go check it out. If you like to listen to podcasts, you can listen to ours wherever you get your podcasts. Monday nights is baseball, Tuesday nights is football. Wednesday and Thursday nights, you never know what you're going to be getting, but you're going to be getting your doses of hockey on Thursday nights as well. If you want to advertise, call Scott 954-304-4941. And if you want to be a guest or have topic ideas, you can email us at southfloridatribune@gmail.com. Back to you, Scott.
All right, just so you know, the Sports Exchange tonight is presented by Hockey Operations LLC. Mike Santos is the man. So there you go. He's going to be the sponsor of the Thursday night show. All we look for is his expertise, and this is his first act. You can only imagine how much better it gets with Mr. Santos, my longtime friend, who I did meet through a legendary guy named Frank Lodato, the sports psychologist. Frank, was one of the nicest guys on the planet. And you talk about an icon, Frank, talk about sports psychology. It's unbelievable, isn't it?
Yeah, I first actually ran into Frank in the American Hockey League back in 1989. And remained friends with him. And when I came to Florida to work with the Panthers, I actually hired Frank. He was already 90 years old. Funny story, he first day he came into our theater to meet all the new players, and he shuffled his feet like if anybody remembers Mr. Tudball, played by Tim Conway on the Carol Burnett. Shuffled his feet up to the blackboard, and he slowly wrote his name on the blackboard and his phone number and his email. And then he turned around, and 65 hockey players looked at him like, "Who is this guy?" Frank said, "Hi, I'm Frank Lodato." He goes, "You can call me anytime, and if I don't get right back to you, it's because I'm dead." And then broke up, and he had him from right there, and he was great. He did so many good things with so many teams that won championships, including the 2011 Bruins team. I know that he also worked with the undefeated 1972 Dolphins team as well. So, yeah, a real legend in the industry.
Yeah, let me tell you, thanks to Frank, I met Mike, and Frank to me was a guy that I really looked up to as a father figure. And rest in peace, Frank. If it weren't for you, I wouldn't have met a lot of great people. And I'm like I said, I said this a lot on the show, and I'll never stop talking about it. I'm so glad that Mike is a great friend of mine, and now that we've joined forces to make hockey a really great show, and this is just the beginning of what Mike and I are planning going forward to really bring a dimension this sport never had. All right, with that said. Okay, I want to break the show up a little bit. We have 2 more hockey topics to get to. I'm not the only author in this room. So, Trent, why don't you let the crew know a little bit about your book as well as your podcast? And you never know, you might have a few guests here in this particular room that would be honored to come on your show. I mean, Mike obviously is unbelievable. Steve is, to me, is a dynamite guy out in New England. I met him on Twitter as well as Mark. So, all right, Trent, I'm going to give you this for the next 5 minutes or so, and you guys can ask a little bit about it. I'll get to 2 more topics before we wrap it up. Fire Up will come up, will be following us with Candy Ebling as a host. Trent, the floor is yours, pal.
Hey, thrilled to be here. I am the author of Leading Winning Teams, and I wrote this book with the idea from Wiley Publishing. They came to me, asked me about my background, had a lot of great guests on Winners Find a Way. And so I was like, man, I've got all these sports guests, and we always talk about how these athletes transition and how you become and build elite teams. And fortunate to be a part of 3 World Series organizations, 3 teams that went, and that was a great experience. But now I've built 14 different companies and always trying to build that team. A lot of people come to me and go, "Oh man, we got a winning team. We got a great team." You know, Mike, as you know, like we pour massive amount of time, energy, and money into finding the right players. Miss all the time, by the way, like miss all the time. And we do the same thing with employees. And so I find out, you know, a lot of people don't spend any time. You know, I got three people with a pulse off Craigslist, and they think they got a great winning team. And organizations are not built that way. You know, you're trying to find those like-minded. And I think one of the things that's fabulous about pro sports that you see, and I talk about this in my book, is that you know, this is hyper learning at the highest level. And there's 3 really areas that you see this hyper learning level: pro athletes, entrepreneurs, and special forces, as Steve knows. And, you know, life and death on the line with special forces. You have to adapt quickly. You have to learn. If you can't learn fast and adapt quickly, you're out. And so it's the same way in sports. Entrepreneurs are the same way. If you don't make it, you know, your competition is going to beat you up. So, you know, as you see the pro athletes, this hyper learning environment is the best in the world, who have been coached by fabulous other coaches who have got all these great experiences. And because they were very gifted, they kept getting more access to even the best. And now you've got a room with 25 of them all together. You have to check your ego at the door when you come into the room with everybody else, because there's an amount of humility that goes out with learning and learning fast. Because if you're humble enough, you check your ego and you learn from the best. I cannot even imagine how much was learned in that 4 Nations Cup. As they said, it's the fastest hockey they've ever played. Now going back to their NHL team, which is, of course, the fastest league in the world. And so now they're going back. And I watched the game the other night, and I'm like, wow, this looks a little slower. You know, like it's a significant drop in speed, just like that. But yet, they're going to bring all those values that they got from these great players, all the best. And they're all, if they went in and sponged those last 7 to 9 days up, they're going right back to their teams, and they want to bring that information and say, hey, listen, there's a couple of things I think we need to make some adjustments here. A couple of things we could do differently. Hey, this is what I've learned. And, you know, we talk about this Motor City, you know, with the late, great Ricky Henderson. And, you know, I came up as a big base stealer, And I remember talking to Ricky, and he was like, oh man, when I'm on second base, all I do is I watch that pitcher's back elbow. If he goes back here, he's got to make a move. If he releases, he's got to throw. And I'm like, man, I've been playing this game for 15 years. No one's ever talked about the pitcher's back elbow. We're all watching feet, but the best in the world are working at another level because they've got guys like Mike Santos around them that learned all these things, and they're passing that knowledge along. So if there's an opportunity for you to get into hyper learning environments, you have to do it. And you have to go with a humble heart, with an open mind, ready to go. And if you're ready for that, I want you to go up and pick up my book, Leading Winning Teams. You're going to learn a ton about yourself. You're going to learn a lot of self-awareness, and it's going to help you rocket ship into whatever you're doing and taking your team to the next level.
And Trent, give them a brief overview about your podcast. I want to get back to the subjects, but everybody gets an idea what you've done, both as an author, as a podcast. 2 more topics I want to get to. Fire up follows us after the show.
Very good. Yeah, I have an award-winning podcast, get about 100,000 downloads a month, called Winners Find a Way. It's a weekly show. We bring on 1%ers in all different categories of everything, whatever they've done. Someone who's overcome and done something very significant. I love the quote from the 4 disciplines of execution that says, winners, when shown data that they're losing, find a way to win. And so Winners Find a Way was born out of that, because this is all I've surrounded myself with my whole life. I want to have winners around me that find a way to win, even when they're down. And listen, the clock may run out, the innings may end, but they're still looking for that solution, and they're driven for it the next day. They have an absolute deep desire to win in everything they do. And if you're surrounding yourself with the best in the world and people who have that type of mindset, mentality, and solution drive, you are going to be on your way to whatever you want to do in this life. And so I highly encourage you, when you surround yourself with those 5 people, you'll want to do that. And you can also tune into my TEDx on discipline called The Pain Exchange, the pain of discipline or the pain of regret. You get to choose, and you're going to want to understand that pain exchange that you choose in discipline of the chronic pain of regret. Always choose that acute short-term pain of discipline, because the downstroke of it is too heavy. Highly encourage you to jump on that TEDx. You can find it on any YouTube.
Trent, I think what you're doing is great, first of all. And I just have a quick question. The buzzword we hear all over the place. In fact, I was listening to, on my Alexa, I listen to sports radio in different cities every day. I was listening to Boston today, and they were talking about this buzzword that I hear everywhere now with teams called culture. Got to bring in a new culture. Got to create a new culture. My thought always with teams was that it didn't matter how hard I try, I couldn't create the players that have to create that culture themselves. And what do you think about that? About creating culture?
Yeah, I think well, first of all, culture constantly shifts, right? It shifts and changes based on personnel, based on, geographics, based on values and what our missions are and how we're aligned in that. Those are big things, and cultures do a lot of shifting. And I'm in the acquisition world, right? Where and athletics are very similar, because free agency, we've changed players, so there's a lot of acquisitions going on, and everyone thinks like your culture is going to stay the exact same, and then we're going to buy another brand. I own an HVAC company, and we're going to buy another HVAC company to expand our geographic region, and everyone's going to have the same values and the same stuff. They're not. You just change your culture entirely, because you're bringing a different mindset, a different way that things have been done. And so you got to have a very stringent system of how you work and what's important. And one of the questions I ask a lot of teams, Mike, when I go into something new and I go, hey, what's not accepted around here? Well, listen, man, like don't take Friday off at 1:00 and take off. The boss will be pissed. Like, no one does that. Like, don't wear jeans on Friday. Don't try to lie on your expense report. Like, everyone has what's not allowed, and they know. And you can learn a lot about the culture on what cultures tolerate. And so, but also what they're always pushing for and pushing people up to the level. One of the best guys I was around was Nick Saban. Everyone knows this. He sets a very high standard. And like, if you don't go and try to give the effort to reach that standard, that's an issue. You may not get to his standard, which is very high, and he holds himself accountable to that too. But like, you may not get there, but man, he is never going to allow anyone to come in under that standard. Like, he's calling you out immediately. So there's a culture like, you're coming here. This is what you said you want. I want a shot at the NFL. I want a shot at a national championship. I want to come and become the best player. The moment you don't do that in his process and his culture, he's calling you out. And it doesn't matter. A rep in the weight room didn't finish your food at meal planning time. You were late for a meeting. Listen, this is what you told me you want. I'm giving you your chance. You better show up in every instance, because it's not tolerated around here.
Great stuff. All right, just Trent, Brian Pennant said, we'll put it up on the screen so you can see it, is he just followed you on Spotify. There you go. So there you go. You got another follower because of it. See what happens when you come on Thursday.
I'm up to 6. That's awesome.
There you go. I told you, man. It's unbelievable. I told you. Coming here on Thursday. You wouldn't regret it. Well, I got to guide you wrong, Trent. Seriously, really? I had to get the
Never.
Okay, good.
I'm going to buy your book, Trent, because I love reading people's experience with that kind of stuff, because as way back when there was a little less snow on the roof, when I was in Special Forces, I was working in the assessment and selection part of that.
Yeah.
And a lot of the same attributes that you look for in a professional athlete, and like they say, building a culture, it's exactly the same. It's obviously a little different because of the job and what they are, but we look for the same kind of people, and it has to come from within. That was the one thing, you have to have that self-discipline to be able to look in the mirror and say, I know I'm not good at this. And instead of working on something else that I'm better at, I need to push harder on this. And sometimes the hardest thing is asking for help. That was one of the things we learned about a lot of guys. Now, they can't ask for help when they come through our selection and assessment process, because that's all on them. But that was designed, excuse me, to put them in the worst possible position. You wear them down physically. They have no sleep. They have very little food. And then they have to be able to think while they're at their physically worst. And if they can function and think and come with, solutions to problems, that's the kind of guy you want, because you can train him to do a lot of other things. But if he doesn't have that burning desire, to learn, that's a big thing. But I'm definitely going to buy your book. I can't wait to read it now.
Thanks, Steve. I'll tell you real quick that, there's a reason why all these employers want athletes in special forces, right? They understand team. They're hyper learners. They're ready for feedback. They're competitive. Like, you just keep going down the list of the things that these people bring. And Mike knows, like, as a coach, we've sat there and go, oh man, like, the barber, I'll take 10 more just like him. I don't need someone that looks like the barber. I don't need someone with his skills. I want someone that brings the effort every day, is a high quality teammate, is ready for feedback, is always willing to go the extra mile to compete, looks out for his fellow man, all those things. And he shows our values in everything, and he upholds them all the time. It's not where he came from, how much money he makes, what he looks like. That's not what we're talking about when we want to clone Barber. We want to clone the attributes that are so effective, because the way he contributes to our team. If I have 10 contributors like the Barber, we're winning world championships, and that's what I want.
Trent, there is only one Barber, baby. There's only one of me.
There's only one.
There might be other guys out there with the same name, but there's only one of me.
Cloning's coming, bro. Cloning's coming, and you're going to be hot, bro.
Hey, can I say one thing about Saban, though? Hey, Scott, you mind if I say one thing about Saban?
No, go ahead.
I held him in the highest regard as a coach until he bailed on things because of NIL and because of the portal. And I kind of felt like this guy had the world by the tail, and he should have adjusted, adapted, and made it work at Alabama, because he's still a young man, essentially, as a coach. As a coach, you got what's his name? He just took the Raiders job. I just was a little disappointed. Huh? Pete Carroll. Thank you. I have my brain's on hiatus
Doesn't
now. I've
matter.
been
You're
up
on
for-
hockey.
Watch
don't
hockey,
worry.
man. It's hockey.
but yeah, I mean, I just that disappointed me in him. I think any great coach figures out a way to get it done, figures out a way to overcome those barriers that's thrown at him. And Mike Santos there, he'll tell you about NIL. He knows that's a whole nother ball of wax. That's a different element that's been thrown into college athletics, and it's trickled down to high school. To be quite honest with you, as a high school person, it's going to be interesting to see how that plays itself out. But I haven't lost complete respect for Saban, but I really wish he would have fought it a little bit. I wish he'd have put up his dukes and went after it a little bit.
All right, just a little special note to our crew members. Mike Santos put his contact information in the chat so you can jot it down before the show goes over. Also, I want to get two more topics before we go. I know we're running right on schedule a little bit. 2 topics. We're not going to go that fast. If there's a true American, tell me that John Tortorella is it, because he said he drove back from the Four Nations tournament. It didn't take a charter flight home. He said there were a lot of Canadians on that charter flight, so he decided to drive it. Now, Mike, what do you think about John Tortorella? Do you know this guy? I'll just say one thing. I got to meet Tortorella. I don't care what anybody says about him. Now I need to meet Tortorella. This is my latest reason why I want to meet him. What do you think about Torts, Mike?
So John Tortorella played the same youth hockey program that I did growing up. Astanet Valley. And he's older than I am. So you know that. But his brother Jim actually is a little bit closer to my age, and I'm very close with him. He was, until this year, the assistant coach at Harvard.
Okay.
Now he's coaching, I believe he's assistant coach at UNH this year. But yeah, he's always been an intense guy, even as a young guy. He's an intense guy. He's not a big guy. Played at Maine. And I think he just wears his heart on his sleeve. Hasn't always been the most friendly to media, probably because he tells the media what he thinks sometimes of them. And the media is used to just asking the questions, and sometimes they're not comfortable getting something thrown back at them. But yeah, he's just a hardworking guy. I don't think anybody that's had him as a coach, once he's not their coach anymore, would say anything bad about him. I mean, he drives them hard, but a lot of the things that Trent was just talking about,
Right.
I mean, there's things that just aren't accepted. But the reason why they're not accepted is because you told me you want to win a championship. You told me you want to be an all-star. You want this. Well, then this stuff's not accepted in my locker room. And so, yeah, I think he's just a hard-driving guy. He's always been like that. And he's going to tell you what he thinks. There's no surprises, but he's also going to be there for you when you need something too.
Yeah, just an FYI, if you don't stand up for the national anthem, that's a one-way ticket into Tortorella's doghouse. You better stand up for it, or he's going to sit you. I'm just going to leave it at that. So, all right, what are your thoughts, Trent, about Tortorella? All right,
I love it, man. I love it. Like, hey, red, white, and blue.
I don't know sign language, so speak so I can see it.
I love it, man. I love it. Like, he's, I love a guy that's just like, I'm not taking the plane with these guys. I just think he stands for something, and like, hey, listen, man, you meet someone, if you don't stand for, if you don't stand for something, then anything's coming, right? Like, and I think he's a passionate guy that clearly wears his heart on his sleeve. Probably been a little, it probably looks a little misguided sometimes, I'm sure, from the outside looking in. But I think he's a pretty consistent guy, which I think is really important. If you're going to be that guy who's going to be hard on your sleeve, go at it 100%. I don't think anyone ever doubts Tortorella's effort and his willingness and commitment in the whole deal. And I just think that's who you want at the helm. And I've been impressed with the guy. There's Steve. You might have a new nickname, man. Steve the Bulldog Ballestieri.
I love it.
I love it. All right, now I got the Bulldog here. All right, go ahead. All right, keep it going there, or he'll say, well, I'm going to say this much about what he said about this Canadian thing. This is I-90 prime from Boston to Philadelphia. I dare him to say that if he's taking I-10 from Jacksonville to California. He'll fly with the Canadians then. But I-95 from Boston to Philadelphia is like a walk in the park. Mike, I don't know if you've taken that drive, But I can tell you right now, since we're both South Florida guys, I can only imagine that probably our drive for us is probably to what, West Palm Beach or Vero Beach. That isn't that bad. But I give him credit for his patriotism about not wanting to ride with the Canadians. But don't tell me, Torch, you're going to take that drive on I-10 from east to west. You'll tolerate the Canadians because Texas is flat and boring. I like Texas, but that drive to get through one state for 20 hours, no, Nelly. I don't want it, although I've taken it a few times. All right. So, Torch, think about it. I still love you. Still want to meet you. All right, Verde, go ahead.
I love Tortorella. I don't like him as an opposing coach, but as a paisan, hey, me, Steve, Tortorella, we'll sit down, break bread, dip it in oil. But no, I love the.
I want some Parmesan on that, man.
No, Steve, please. This guy wants Parmesan on our bread.
I know. I want some Parmigiana.
Hey, listen, he is old school. He's old school. He's going to demand the most out of you. And I think that's where we have lost a lot of our young athletes today. They don't want to go that extra mile like these guys push them to. And I see it, like I said, I work at the high school level. I coached at the high school level, high school football forever as a head coach, whatever. And, man, the kids think that everything should be dropped in their lap, whether it's at the high school, the college, or the professional level today. And Tortorella just doesn't believe in that. And that's one of my favorite things about him. Like, no matter what, I don't care who he's coaching. I may not like him when my team is playing him, but as far as the message he brings and what he expects, that's a whole nother level of respect from me. So
what do you think, Steve?
Yeah, Tortorella he's a fiery guy. He shoots from the hip. He's not very popular with the media, but as my friend Pat Burns was known. Now, if you knew Pat Burns, Pat wasn't a favorite of the media either.
Mm-mm.
But if you knew him after the cameras were turned off, he was a completely different person. And he just never had that comfort level. He was burned by the media a couple of times earlier in his career. So he was just never that guy. But, I kind of like Tortorella. I just wonder, with as fiery and passionate as he is, I wonder, when he takes over a team, if he has a limited shelf life before the players start to turn him off. Because, he takes that fire to another level. We've seen that. But, he's a guy I would love to sit down and talk to. I can tell you that.
Yeah,
I think he's a fascinating coach.
Mike, what's he with? Is he with his 9th team or something? It's a lot.
Oh, no, he's not. I don't think he's that far. Mike Keenan had more teams than him.
Yeah, Mike Keenan made the rounds.
He didn't last more than 1 or 2 years. John Tortorella sticks around. He does have a Stanley Cup in his pocket, right, Mike?
Yeah, I know Torts, and I actually worked with Keenan for a couple of years. But
did you?
Does he have a shelf life? Sure. But I think that's why this is the perfect team for him. Philadelphia, they're rebuilding. They're young. They're very young. And so I think that shelf life, if there is even one in Philadelphia, is a lot longer.
Yeah.
Because, like, again, we were talking about before with culture and what's not allowed here. It's much easier to impose that and create that with a group of young guys than with some veteran guys. And
that's right.
That's why I think he's the perfect guy right now to build what they want to build in Philadelphia, which is to get back to those big, tough, in your face teams. That's what the Flyers have always been known for. He'll build that kind of team with these young guys. It'll just take a few years.
Well, the only thing I know about what his current situation, we'll get to the final topic, unless Trent wants to answer something real quick, is he got a player on that team that doesn't speak English. So I guess they have to find a specially communicate on that team. And I don't know if you're a coach and you have a player that doesn't speak English. I don't know how you work around that situation.
I think he sees Tort turning red and freaking out. I'm sure he doesn't need to understand the language to know when Tort's pissed, right? Like I think probably Torts is the perfect guy. You don't need it's like sign language, man. Like you know exactly what he's saying. The emotion's all over his face, right? I love what the Barb said. You know, two things I have in the book. Roger Staubach, there's no traffic jams along the extra mile. And a great strength coach, Ken Manny out of Michigan State. Don't just go the extra mile, build your house on it. That's a guy like Torts, man. He's preaching that, man. Like this is where you find your game, and hockey's always been an effort game. And what I've really been impressed with the money coming up in hockey, and it's not baseball money yet. But what I've really been impressed with the hockey is that it's not changing guys. They're not going soft. I mean, that all-star showing up and kind of half-ass, and it's been like, hopefully they get that out, but they're going hard, man. Like no one's letting off the gas because of some contract. So it's a pretty impressive thing.
Okay. Final topic of the night.
Hey, Scott, one last comment for you. Mishkov can put the biscuit in the basket. Tortorella doesn't care about what he speaks or how he speaks it, as long as that kid scores.
All right, well, there you go. I'll leave. You got the last word on that one. It doesn't matter what color
That's a good
your
one.
face is, as long as you put that black biscuit in and that gold, it's okay. And I may not be the most color coordinated with eyes, but I can associate that set of colors there. All right, final topic tonight, really easy. Right now, well, it looks like the Red Wings and the Columbus Blue Jackets are going at it, trying to find out what the latest score is, but they're going to be playing in the Stadium Series. Is it the Stadium Classic out in Columbus? So let's talk about the event itself. Mike, what are your thoughts about the Columbus Blue Jackets and the Detroit Red Wings, a.k.a. the Ohio State Buckeyes and the Michigan Wolverines, playing in a 90,000 seat building called Ohio Stadium and the Horseshoe? That's pretty good stuff. The last time we saw anything like that was out in, was it Michigan Stadium when Toronto played? But let's talk about the Michigan, Ohio State, Columbus Red Wings rivalry. Mike, we're seeing the game. I'll get an update on the score in Detroit, but pretty good stuff.
I think it's nice this year because both teams are actually fighting for wild card spots right now. So that helps a lot. As far as the event itself, I thought the NHL had something that was theirs when they had that one game on New Year's Day every year. Something that everybody knew when it was, could look forward to it. But like happens, I guess, in life is people can't help themselves. And now they've got 6 or 8 or 10 of these every year all over the place. And I think it gets less attention. So I'd like to see them go back to just having one outdoor game on New Year's Day, especially now the way the college bowl games are spread out all over the place and the national championship playoff system works. And let them get all the attention on one day for one big outdoor game.
Makes sense. For whatever it's worth, the Michigan Wolverines and Ohio State Buckeyes own the last 2 college football national championships, and the stage is set for Saturday. All right, go ahead, Trent.
Yeah, I like Mike's idea, right? I like the scarcity of it, right? Of just having that one big annual, and I really enjoy that. By the way, also like my son, who's a huge Buckeye fan, and we live in Michigan, so we have hockey in Michigan, and then he's a Buckeye guy, so he's on cloud 9. He's on Permagrin since that national championship, and from that side of like the series. Like hockey's awesome with a 18,000 seat stadium. Like the NHL's really figured that out. It's a great spectator sport. I think it'd be arguably the best spectator sport out there. And I know the NFL wants to talk about it, but the NHL is fast and it's furious. And there's too much downtime in the NFL. There's too many commercial timeouts. The NHL's got something that everybody else doesn't have. And part of it's the experience. I think the stadium's ticket, it's a terrible ticket, right? Like you can't see the game. So the pageantry thing is kind of a cool concept. I think one a year is more than enough. I love this concept right now with the Michigan, Ohio State thing and the battle and the big horseshoe and the Red Wings and Columbus. And also it's timely because they are both battling it out. It's great that Detroit got back in this thing. So it'll be a great game. But the other thing is like the ice and the conditions are pretty poor on some of the ice. It really affects the quality of play in the game. And like, man, when you're in it, like these two teams where points matter, well, we're going to play a game on soft ice. And I know they both got to deal with the conditions, but man, that's not what these guys need right now. Like they want every edge they can get, not to have disadvantages.
Well, the only thing I'll say is that game they had in Lake Tahoe was a mitigating disaster when the ice melted, but we won't get into that since we're running a little shorter on time.
The first game they ever did, ended up, it looked great. But let me tell you something, it wasn't great playing in the middle of that snowstorm between the Penguins and the Sabres.
And the Sabres.
And they had the shoot. Guys could barely push the puck down the ice because there was so much snow on.
Yeah, that's true. Good points. Okay, Mark, some thoughts, and then we have Steve, and then we'll wrap it up.
2 games a year. One of them needs to be the Heritage Classic up in Canada. I think the 2 Canadian teams need to play one. I think the other one can be in the States. I think those teams need to earn their way to that privilege. I think that you need to pick a smaller venue, though. Having it in a large stadium is just a money grab. I'm not down with that at all. I liked it initially, going back 10 years and watching it. It was fantastic. I watched it as it's gone on in time. We're trying to spread it around the country, and it's just not the same appeal to me. It's almost like an all-star game from that perspective. So that's my take on it. No.
All right, while I have a chance, I want to acknowledge a lot of people in the chat room. Mickey, Delaney, thanks for the contributions. Roy Lee Quack, great stuff by you. Ryan Pettit as well. Those are the 3 Penguin Sports. He'll be on with Candy, I believe, in a little while. So with that said, Steve, you have the final word on this, and then we'll wrap this show up. Mike Santos, I want to point out, though, before we go to Steve, this show is presented by Hockey Operations LLC. Mike Santos is the owner. If you want to reach out to him, all you have to do is look up Hockey Operations LLC, and Mike will do anything he can to help you out. He is the sponsor of the Thursday Night Sports Exchange. Glad to have Mike on. And again, this show's a little bit longer. It's our first act here. We have a lot of great crew members and a lot of great to talk about. They normally last about 60 minutes. Every now and then they'll go over a little bit more, especially on the introductory show. But when you have so many good guys, I don't cut anybody off. I'd rather take it away from myself and put the emphasis on the rest of you guys. You're the stars. It's just my job not to screw it up. All right, Steve, go ahead.
Yeah, I love the outdoor games. I do. I mean, it's never going to be perfect because of the conditions outside, but there's just something about it. It brings you back to when you were a kid playing out on a pond before anything started, right?
Right.
There's something about that whole thing that I really like it. If they want to cut it down to 2 games, I wouldn't be totally against that. It would make it more exclusive, I think. And I agree. One of the games should be in Canada. They don't have to play each other. I think you could have a game with original 6 teams like up in Toronto or Montreal, and I think that would be really cool. But at the same time, I think that it's good for the game. I think fans get into it. They don't need to be playing it in some 100,000 seat football stadium. No, it needs to be a little more intimate, and bring the fans in closer. The problem with those big arenas or football stadiums like that, the fans are so far away.
Right.
You might as well be watching it on TV, because you're too far away from it. That's, it was a dump, but the old Boston Garden, that's why I loved it, because you were right on top of everything.
Yeah.
And
I was at the 1982 Final Four when Michael Jordan was there at the Superdome, and I had nosebleed seats, so you can only imagine what these are like.
yeah.
I mean, those are late. But I'm with you all the way. And the only thing I'll say about it is I agree with everybody on the panel. One in Canada, one in the United States. You don't want it to get watered down, but it's a money grab. What can you say? Roy Lee Quack makes a quick point here. Get teams that are competitive for the outdoor games. Yeah, you'd like to do that, but sometimes seasons turn out a little differently, and it doesn't always work out that way. But I understand where this guy's coming from, so I'm not going to doubt what he has to say. Great show tonight. I want to have Candy in for one more station break, and then everybody can talk about it. And Mike, once again, as we wrap up the show, you can give everybody a little bit more information about your company. And we look forward to having Mike Santos on Thursday nights here on the Sports Exchange. We talk hockey, exclusively hockey. Tonight we had a special crew tonight. George Eichhorn figures be back next week. Trent had an opportunity to fill in for him tonight. And Steve, it's a bonus. Anytime you come on, it's a blessing. So with that said, Candy, come out for a station break, please. Well, she'll get here sooner or later, but before she does, okay, why don't you let everybody know how they get a hold of you, Steve?
Yeah, you can find me on Twitter at SteveB7SFG. All the other social media stuff at Steve Balistreri. I write for PatsFans.com in the NFL. I also write a lot of national security stuff for 1945.com. We cover all kinds of military stuff that's going on in the world. And, I still really enjoy that. But, in the sports world, I do a podcast every week with my partner for the past 14 years, Patriots 4th and 2. And, once in a while, I bought on a couple other podcasts like yours, Scott. So always look forward to that.
Great stuff. All right, Mark, let everybody know how to get a hold of you.
You can find me at OSP with MM or Original Sports Podcast on every social media place that you look. We're also on YouTube. We do a show on Tuesday nights called Original Sports Podcast with Mark Meriday. And we do a Thursday night show called Terrible Talk, all about the Pittsburgh Steelers, heaven forbid. Both of my shows are also on Roku. The Tuesday night show does air on Roku from 7 to 8. And the Terrible Talk show airs on Sunday night on Roku from 6 to 7.
Okay, Trent, go ahead. I know you had an opportunity earlier, but you can go ahead and give everybody
Trent at leadershipity.com. Email me. You can find me on all the social medias at Trent M. Clark or on Leadershipity. That's my brand. Please tune in to Winners Find a Way. Like us, subscribe, share it, please, and go out and get that book, man.
Great stuff. Okay, Mike, let everybody know a little bit about, once again, your business. Candy will wrap it up with a station break shortly, but go ahead, Mike, the floor is yours.
Thanks for letting me join you guys tonight. It was great. The best way to reach me is actually just through email at msantos@hockeyoperations.org. I've got all sorts of different Twitter handles and social media addresses for my different companies, but that's the best way to reach me. And just looking forward to speaking with you guys again.
Okay, Candy, take over.
South Florida Tribune Publishing Company published a book, Lessons from the Microphone, Tuning into the Enduring Wisdom of Visionary Leaders. It is written by your host, Scott, the Motor City Madmouth Morganroth. It is available on Amazon, Barnes & Noble, Kindle, Google, and Apple Books. Talks about Scott's 40-plus years in the media business and how it has changed. There's also a link on our website, www.southfloridatribune.com. where there is a plethora of great information. Go check it out. There's also a link to our merchandise store. If you like to listen to podcasts, you can find us wherever you get your podcasts. Monday nights, we talk baseball. Tuesday nights, we talk football. Wednesday nights, you never know. And Thursday nights, we talk hockey. And then on Fire Up, which will be following this show, tune in to find out what we're going to be talking about. We're going to be talking about some of the grades that the NFL have given each other's teams from the players and the likes. So go check that out. Check us out. If you want to be on a show, you can email us at southfloridatribune@gmail.com. If you want to advertise, call Scott 954-304-4941. Okay, Scott.
All right, thanks. Well, that does wrap it up for this edition of the Sports Exchange. So on behalf of Mike Santos, who I look forward to seeing every Thursday night or when he can get on, Trent Clark, who is my co-host on Monday night, as well as Mark Barber, who comes on Thursday and whenever he wants on Monday night, and Steve Balistreri, who is a regular on Inside the Picture when he gets a chance. My name is Scott Motor City, the Motor City Man. Well, thank you for joining us, and we look forward to seeing you next Thursday. God bless everybody. And Mike, glad to have you on the network. We really appreciate you big time. Your impact was felt big, and looking forward to our next opportunity together, my friend. Thank you very much. Fire Up is next.